You're listening to ThunderQuack Podcast Network.
Hello there, and welcome back to Force Perspectives for the final episode of The Acolyte. The Acolyte. That's not a mistake. That's the title of the episode. I am one of your hosts, Michael Cohen, and joining me, as always, a rogue Jedi acting on his own, Joe Hogan.
I mean, I do what I want, so that works.
We did it. We made
did
it
it.
to the end of this season.
We did it.
Interestingly, the language around the series has morphed from kind of talking about it as a limited series, and everything in the last week has been about the season finale, the end of the season, the final episode of the season. So, that's maybe an indicator of a season 2. And certainly some of the story stuff is an indicator that we could be heading towards a season 2. But before we get into the episode itself, I just wanted to give everybody a heads up about something that we are doing. And this is perfect timing because it's the end of the season. We're teaming up. We're partnering with the Geeky Waffle and a bunch of other awesome Star Wars podcasts, Lipsticks and Lightsabers, Friends of the Force, Yearn with Me, Yap Sesh. Who else is on this list? Stardust Record, like a whole bunch of other podcasts. And we're going to be doing a live stream on Saturday. As part of this fundraiser, Acolytes for Equality. So we'll be on at 6:30, from 6:30 to 7 Eastern time. We're just going to be on for that half an hour. Joe and I talking about the Acolyte. I think we're gonna talk about sort of the I think like costume and production design, that sort of thing. We're just basically going to talk about the look and feel of the Acolyte, because I think it's one of my favorite parts, and we haven't actually talked that much about it on the podcast. So I thought that would be a good opportunity for us to dig into that, and you'll be able to join us live on during this whole live stream, and there's more content. It starts at 5:30 and it goes until 10 o'clock. Again, that's Eastern time. So adjust 3 hours ahead for Pacific, and if you're somewhere in the middle, I don't know, figure it out, do the math. There are other time zones, I guess, or if you're outside of continental United States and Canada, continental North America, then I can't help you. I don't know. You're gonna have to figure that one out. But that's when we'll be on, is 6:30 to 7 as part of this fundraiser. And I'm super excited about it. It's really awesome. The fundraiser, as of this recording, has almost, I think we're like $100 away from $2,000 raised already.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and the fundraiser hasn't even happened yet. So it's all raising money in support of Equality Now. Here's just a little bit of what Candace from Geeky Waffles put together for this. So I just want to read this out. So what is Equality Now? At Equality Now, we believe in creating a just world for women and girls. Since 1992, our international network of lawyers, activists, and supporters have tackled the most difficult issues, challenged ingrained cultural assumptions, and called out inequality wherever we see it. So yeah, they've actually, Equality Now has talked about the Acolyte and the characters. They've got a quote here. Amandla is an inspiration and a glimpse of the bright future of feminism. As a gay, non-binary, intersectional feminist, Amandla, who uses she/they pronouns, paves the way for feminists of all ages whose identity has not historically been represented or embraced by the women's movement in the United States. So this is an awesome organization to be teaming up with, and raising some money for, especially like in light of the nonsense that's happening in the United States at the moment, and honestly around the world. I think that women's rights all over the globe are being eroded and challenged, and so throwing a little bit of money at an organization that's equipped to fight that fight, I think is definitely a worthwhile cause, and one that very much syncs up with the Acolyte and a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about in this series. So yeah, I'm super excited to be a part of it. I'm so grateful to Candace for inviting us, a couple of ding dongs like Joe and I, to hang out with all of these cool people and help raise some money, and talk about Star Wars. I mean, it's just always good to get together with other Star Wars folks and talk about Star Wars. So the live stream will be on YouTube. And there's a GoFundMe that you can find a link to. You'll be able to find both of those links, either in a pinned post on Twitter, or over on I've created a highlight on our Instagram. Both of those are at Force POV, and so yeah, that'll be the quickest way to get to those. So hopefully everybody can tune in to the live stream. It's on YouTube, so I imagine that it will be saved and you'll be able to watch it at a future time. I think it's on the Geeky Waffle. Yeah, it's right there on the Geeky Waffle YouTube. So you can also just search that for the Geeky Waffle, and then I think you'll be able to like set the reminder and all of that sort of thing for when the live stream starts. I would say like hang out for as much of it as you can, but hopefully we'll see you guys there from 6:30 to 7 Eastern time, to talk about the Acolyte and raise some money. So that's that. I just wanted to let everybody know that we'll be doing that. But hopefully we'll also get some new eyeballs and find some new friends to come hang out with us, and check out the podcast, because that's always great to find more awesome Star Wars people with right-minded heads, because God knows there's a lot of real
What?
goofball idiots out there talking about Star Wars right now.
What do you mean?
What do I mean? Well, let's address the elephant in the room, or the mun in the cave, as it were. I with this episode, there is literally nothing that can be done to shut these people up, because they were given exactly what they wanted and they hated it. I mean, if you've seen, I'm just going to call it right out. If you've seen the video of Star Wars Theory reacting to the episode, he literally gets angry seeing the character. Now, I haven't been following everything that he said, because God knows I don't need that psychic damage, because good gravy. Like, just if there is somebody who exemplifies the idiocy of the fandom menace, right wing, all right wing movement better than like it's definitely Star Wars Theory. He has become the poster child for that. So if that offends you, you're listening to the wrong podcast. But I am positive that he has been saying constantly throughout the season of this series that he doesn't like, so I don't know why he's watching and talking about. Whatever. Like, oh, but this conflicts with Darth Plagueis. This is breaking the canon of Darth Plagueis. Where does Darth Plagueis come into all of this? And then, like, literally in the finale, they're like, he's here. This is where he comes in. And it is very obviously a tease for a second season and for ongoing stories, which Leslie Headland has talked about. Like, she has a pretty good idea of the story that she would want to tell if she was allowed to tell that story of Darth Plagueis, Tenebris, Palpatine, all of that stuff. And wonderfully, she says, she's got a good idea, and it's pretty messy. And I just I salivate at the idea of Leslie Headland tackling that and talking about the messiness of Palpatine and Plagueis and uncovering all of that stuff. And obviously, we have the Darth Plagueis novel already, which is technically Legends as of right now. How much of it is canon, is one of those things that's up in the air. Nothing in that novel, nothing in the existing lore of Darth Plagueis conflicts with him appearing in this episode. There are some people who would try and tell you that it does, because they'll go like, well, it doesn't make any sense. Plagueis would be like 15 years old at the time of this, because he says in the Plagueis novel that he's 100 years old. Well, these idiots are showing their asses, right? Absolutely, theirs, like, as they always do with the Kiadi Mundi stuff as well, with everything that they complain about. They are absolutely just revealing themselves as the thing that they claim to hate, which is the quote unquote fake Star Wars fan, because it's like, you have no idea what you're talking about. You've clearly only read the Wikipedia entry and not actually read the novel, or if you read the novel, you don't remember any of it, and you're just completely talking out of your ass. Because in the novel specifically, Plagueis, when he is talking to Palpatine, says, because I would, in your human years, I would be well over 100 years old. Well over 100 years old, which to me is like upwards of 150 years old, right? So first and foremost, if we're going to take that, well over 100 years old when he's talking to Palpatine, then okay, if this is like 100 years before the Phantom Menace, and we're placing that conversation at that point, which is what they're doing, then he's over 50 years old at the point of this story. Now, that's not the case. That point in the Darth Plagueis novel is like 30 years before the Phantom Menace. So let's just say 150 years old, just to like split the difference between 100 and 200. He's well over 100 years old. Could mean anything. He's also a Sith, so like he's talking in vagaries for a reason. Maybe he doesn't want to reveal everything to Palpatine. Maybe he's 500 years old at that point, because Plagueis' whole thing is immortality, is prolonging his own life, right? That's sort of the whole deal. It's what Palpatine takes from him is all of this knowledge. So he could just be full of nonsense and giving Palpatine a half truth, well over 100 years old. But whatever, let's say he's 150, so that makes him 180. Like at the point of the Phantom Menace, he's like 180 years old, right? I don't remember exactly what the timeline is when, because Plagueis is still alive during Phantom Menace, right? Isn't that the
I think
implication
at
in
the
the novel?
start of it. I don't know if he is by the end of it.
Yeah.
But
It's
yeah, that's
basically
my impression.
Yeah, it's like, right, because Palpatine has a conversation with him about Anakin, right? Or no, Dooku has a conversation with Palpatine about Anakin, and then I think Palpatine takes that information to Plagueis, or I can't remember the exact timeline, because I listened to Plagueis, like, I think within the year that it came out, and it came out a while ago. So I'm fuzzy on some of the details myself, and like this conversation about how old Plagueis is like, it's been brought up by many podcasters and YouTubers or whatever over the last couple of days. So I have all the details on that, but in any case, he is easily 80, 90, maybe 100 years old at the point of the Acolyte. Easily at that point, like easily old enough to have all of this dark side knowledge and to have been a Sith for a long time, and whatever. And the other part of it is that, like, that shit's not canon, guys. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's a cool novel. It's a great story. Darth Venomous, Darth Tenebrous, Darth Plagueis, Palpatine, Dooku, all of it. It's great. It's great background, and it certainly adds to the prequels. But like all legend stuff, take what matters and discard what doesn't. And forget everything you think that you know, because it's all it's all subject to change. Even things that are actually canon are subject to change. They're canon until they're not. And I think that people just need to like really let go of that stuff, let go of that ideology that that this stuff is written in stone. First off, they're fairy tales a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. It's literally framed from the very first moment of Star Wars that all of this is fairy tale, and fairy tales change. Fairy tales, I mean, in true fairy tale fashion, they're oral tradition for the most part. So everybody kind of puts their own spin on it, and they evolve and change over time. Um, but even as they're written down and stuff like that, folklore, fairy tales, legend, mythology, it's all subject to change based on the audience that is viewing it at the time that they're viewing it. So like, let go. And I'm begging everybody out there who's got that mentality with Star Wars, go invest in other fandoms, invest in other stories, go find something that's been around for longer than Star Wars. Because Star Wars, compared to, let's say, Superman, is still like, I wouldn't say a child, but like we're talking about an almost 100-year legacy versus a almost 50-year legacy, right? Like, as a Superman fan, I've said this a million times on various podcasts. As a Superman fan, you cannot constrict yourself to what is quote unquote canon. The concept doesn't exist, right? There's an existing continuity, but that continuity literally includes universe altering rewrites, like both the original Infinite Crisis, New 52, and not to mention a myriad of small retcons throughout, that are peppered throughout the timeline of Superman. The stuff that we consider to be like foundational Superman is the most nonsensical garbage you've ever read in your life. Like, somebody will try and tell you, oh, black kryptonite doesn't do that, gold kryptonite doesn't do that, and it's like, listen, from issue to issue, when those things were introduced, that stuff changes, man. Like, that stuff, like one writer is like, yeah, gold kryptonite, it does this, and then another writer comes along, has not read that story, and just goes like, gold kryptonite, I'm introducing it. It's like, no, you're not. It was introduced 5 years prior, and it did a different thing. Because like at one point, I don't remember if it's gold kryptonite or a different color of kryptonite, but one of them like turns Superman into a dude with a lion head. Like,
All right, cool.
Like,
Sure.
get out of here, and like, this is the thing, is like, it's a fun story. Like, that's a fun story. It's completely inconsequential to what we would consider, core Superman mythology, right? And I think like that way of looking at it is like, stop looking at canon, non-canon, legends, Disney, blah blah blah. What is core mythology to Star Wars? What is foundational? And not in the sense of like it cannot be changed. It will always, it's always shifting, it's always changing. New stories add new context. I think that's something that we've been saying all season for this, right? But what when I say what's core, what's foundational, what is important to the message, the purpose, and the ideology of Star Wars? That's what matters. the most. And maybe I'll contradict myself a little bit here, but like, let's look at an example that you guys know I am not a huge fan of: Rogue One and Andor, right? Like, tonally, they're off in terms of Star Wars for me, right? They miss a lot of elements, but but
With the
core
what?
Star Wars, do they contain core Star Wars ideology? 1,000%, right? Absolutely. Is Andor true to the core of Star Wars? Yes. Is it missing some of the flavors of Star Wars that I love? Yes. That's why I can say, like, Andor is really really good, and I got a lot out of it when I watched it. Is it the type of Star Wars that I want to consume? No. Those are different things, right? Is it good Star Wars? Is it bad Star Wars? That's a different thing from, like, is it my flavor of Star Wars? Is it the type of Star Wars that I want to invest my time in? Is it the type of Star Wars that I would invest time in creating? No. Right? Like unequivocally no. It's missing so much of what I love. But it absolutely is true to the core of Star Wars, but it's very isolated in what it's considering the core of Star Wars, and that's George Lucas's anti-establishment, anti-war, and anti-capitalism, anti-republic. Uh, like, it's his political stance, and it's his political stance boiled down to, like, the very concentrated core of what that is, and then turned into a story, right? I So yeah, like to me, take what is important and just leave the rest of it behind. It's window dressing. They're elements added in order to reinforce that story at that time, and that's going to change. The Mandalorians had no backstory until they had one. The like, Boba Fett was just a guy in the background until some comic books started to give him a little bit more, and then some novels, the Mandalorian armor, and there's like a trilogy of those novels, right? I can't remember what all of them are titled, but like, that started to solidify it, the Jaster Muriel Concord Dawn stuff. And then, video games and comic books came after that, and then novels came after that, like the Karen Travis stuff came after that. But when George sat down to tell a story about Mandalore, he disregarded all of it, right? Like, none of it mattered. But then, even after that, Dave Filoni came in and, like retconned it to fix some of it, right? And the way you have to look at it is folklore, fairy tale, legend, mythology, oral tradition of, like, these stories have been told, and when they were told from one point of view, it was true that Boba Fett was once Jaster Muriel, the journeyman protector from Concord Dawn, right? But then you hear another story from somebody else, and it's like, no, 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 that's not right. Jaster Muriel was the journeyman protector Mandalorian that trained Jango Fett, who was adopted into the Mandalorian culture, right? And it's like, actually none of that happened either. And it's like it just evolves and it changes, and it doesn't, to me, it doesn't discredit any of the stories that went before. If those stories are good, then they stand the test of time, right?
Hmm.
And it doesn't matter if they remain legends, or if they're brought fully into canon, because some stuff does get brought fully into canon, right? And then some stuff gets retconned. I mean, like, look at the story happening in The Mandalorian. Heir to the Empire, and the Thrawn trilogy was obliterated by the sequel trilogy. I think it's one of the main reasons why the sequel trilogy gets as much flack as it does, is because people really had an idea of what the follow-up to the original trilogy was supposed to be, and then the sequel trilogy completely alters that, right? But then you look at what's happening with the Mandalorian and Ahsoka and the Book of Boba Fett, and it's all in an effort to recanonize the story of Heir to the Empire and the subsequent novels, right? In order to like bring Thrawn back into prominence in that time period. And it's doing it perfectly. It's doing an incredible job of that. So like this is the thing, is that Heir to the Empire still exists. As a matter of fact, they just reprinted that entire trilogy, right? Like, or I don't know if they've made it all the way through, but they've been reprinting a bunch of Legends books, right? Actually, I think that The Last Command is not out yet. I think it was in that latest round that they just announced. That includes the Brian Daly Han Solo adventures, which I suggest everybody goes and picks up. Because those are my favorite Star Wars novels. And are they canon? Absolutely not. There's nothing canon about them. But it doesn't matter. I still love them. I still love those stories, and I still love the Marvel comics from the 70s and the 80s, and none of that is canon. It's all been thrown out the window, right? And replaced with new Marvel comics that threw out a bunch of Dark Horse Star Wars comics, right? Like it's like that destroyed Splinter of the Mind's Eye, right? Like it all, none of it matters, guys. None of it matters. None of it's important. Joe, is any of it important?
Well, last time I checked, all of
Yeah.
the books and video games and comics that I really like are still on my shelves. Like I'm allowed,
Yeah.
I think legally, to read them or play them anytime I feel like.
Yeah.
So I'm all right with it. It's okay with
Yeah.
me.
I think it's
don't have an issue.
fine. I think our childhoods are all perfectly intact. And along those lines, I want to say something about, like, you know, we've talked about this, about the, like, hey, like if all you like is one of the Star Wars movies, I don't know if you're really a Star Wars fan. Like, I don't know if you need to classify yourself as a Star Wars fan. If you want to identify as a Star Wars fan, I'm not going to gatekeep that. Anybody who wants to call them a Star Wars fan is more than welcome to, and whatever degree to which you are a Star Wars fan, it's fine. Where it becomes a problem is when you start tearing down other people and claiming that your ideology is the only true Star Wars ideology. That's nonsense, right? And we don't have any room for that in the community. Like, get out of here. You know, kick rocks, as they say.
That's one of Tina's phrases. She always says.
I like it. It's a good one. But like, sort of an addendum to that, because I've been thinking about it a lot lately, and sort of like fixing the language that I use around it to make it not gatekeepery. Listen, if all you like is the original trilogy, that's totally fine. That's totally, like, I have no problem with that, and I never have, right? Even when I say, like, you know, like, maybe you're not actually a Star Wars fan, because Star Wars has become a much bigger thing. You call yourself a Star Wars fan, I don't care. Just, like, stay in that pool. You know what I mean? Don't come into my pool and start peeing in it. You know? Because, like, we're over here in the Acolyte pool having a fucking great time, and these assholes want to come over here and they want to fucking piss in our pool. Go back to the original trilogy pool that you are saying, like, no one is allowed to pee in this pool, right? If anybody pees in this pool, they're a bad person. Okay, fine, whatever. Have that thought process if that's how you want to live your life. I think that it's stupid. I mean, I don't think anybody should be peeing in any pools, right? I think we should just all stop peeing in pools in general, and then everybody will be fine. But, like, go back to your own fucking pool and stay there. If all you want is that pool, stay there. Don't come into ours, because we're over here having fun. And, like, your pool is great, but it was made in the 1970s and 80s, and it's, like, very limited in the amount of things and activities that you get to engage in over there. Over here in the Acolyte pool, we've got, like, a water slide, and there's, like, an attached hot tub, and it's like an infinity pool on the side of a cliff with a beautiful view. And like our pool is rad as hell, and it actually, like, it connects to the prequel pool and it connects to the sequel one as well. And it's like, and we get to just, like, go back and forth between all of these things. But, like, if you want to be lame and just sit in the original trilogy pool, that is just like, it's just like a square, right, with like a deep end and a shallow end, and the stairs to get in and out, and that's it. Maybe it has a diving board, maybe, right? But it's not a very high one. It's just one of the, it's like a pool in somebody's backyard. But like over here we've got like the Olympic size prequel pool that like they added the Clone Wars edition onto it, and so like, man, it's incredible. I and like leave the rest of us alone. Let us have fun doing what we're doing, and just like go watch your THX VHS tapes by yourself. Stop trying to ruin everybody else's fun. But this is the thing, that's what they're here to do, right? They're not here to be Star Wars fans. They're not here to engage in meaningful discussion and go like, that's Plagueis, what does it mean, right? They're here to ruin everybody else's fun. And I is like what we've been saying all season. Don't engage, don't give them oxygen, right? Like, just like and when I say that, it's like, we can talk about them here because this gives them nothing, right? Like they're not getting, they can't monetize my podcast. I can't monetize my podcast, trust me, I've tried. I other than Patreon, thank you everybody who supports us on Patreon, you're the best. Patreon.com/ThunderQuack. But yeah, like, don't go on their tweets and argue with them. Don't go into their YouTube comment sections and argue with those. Like, just let them all yell at each other about how mad they are about Star Wars while we're over here just enjoying the hell out of it. And yeah, like just block them. Just block that nonsense. Just block it. Your life will be better as a result. Because I don't see any of this stuff firsthand anymore. I hear about it via other people that I follow, and to be honest, some of those people I have unfollowed because it's all they talk about. All they talk about is like the bad stuff. And it's like, but what do you think about Star Wars? Like, I'm like, stop telling me about the bad takes and tell me about your take, right? So the people who are just like, it's like, I have also like unfollowed and soft blocked some of those people, because it's just like, you're also just here for the drama. You're just on Star Wars Twitter or on YouTube or whatever to engage in the drama, and it's like, that's not what we're here for. We're here to talk about Star Wars. So with all of that said, let's talk about Star Wars. I think it was just important for me to talk about it in regards to like what I was talking about canon, because we were having a discussion. Like, it was brief, but there was a little bit of a conversation on the Discord, and I just wanted to kind of I don't know, like, I guess expand on it on the podcast here and talk about it in depth, because that's how I approach stuff, and that's being a Superman fan. It's how I have to. Because like, you can't be a fan of that. You can't be a fan of old school comic book characters, any of them that have been around for more than 50 years, to then like to take what you like and just discard the rest. You just leave it. It doesn't like it. You don't need to trash it. You don't need to talk down to it. I mean, like, we can have conversations and critical discussion, and I can tell you the Superman stuff that I think is terrible, but like, I don't know. It's just, it feels like a waste of energy to talk about the bad stuff when we could just be talking about the stuff that brings us joy, right? The stuff that makes us happy. So let's pivot now to this episode and what made you happy. What did make you happy about this episode, Joe? Because you loved it, and I
really did. I love this whole series. Like, it really, really, like, what a pleasant, I guess not a surprise, because I was looking forward to it and I was very hopeful that I would enjoy it. I just didn't realize how much I was going to enjoy it.
Yeah.
Dude, there was so much to love in this. Like, I lost my mind with Plagueis. Like, I know we already touched on that, but like, oh my god, I was
get into it, man. Like
flipping out.
Go for it.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. Like, we did all of the speculating, and we were like, yeah, Vernestra. Oh, maybe Mother Coral. Okay, but really, like, in my heart of hearts, I wanted to see Plagueis. I just didn't think they were gonna go there, and they fucking went there.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
lost my mind. I was so excited. So like Tina is a casual fan, and she really enjoys it, but like she just doesn't know the lore inside out, but she's
Mhm.
more than down to watch like anything. So I'm full, oh my god, they fucking did it! It's fucking Plagueis! Oh my god! Oh my god! And like I'm not hearing anything from the other end of Discord, and I'm like, do you remember who Plagueis is? She's like, no. So I was like, he's Palpatine's master, and like he's the guy for, remember, you ever hear the tragedy talk about? She's like, oh. She's like, I didn't know what he looked like. And it hit me like, man, a lot of people are not going to understand the significance of this moment right now.
Yeah.
Because like even, I mean, I don't know. I would argue that most casual fans have not read the Plagueis novel.
Yeah.
And have like just don't know what he looks like. He's just a name to them. If they just saw the prequels and like that was it, like that would kind of be it for their exposure. So it's almost like a shame that moment probably doesn't click for more people watching it. But at the same time, like we got it. Who cares? We got him. Love that, dude. The crystal bleeding sequence was so awesome. The show is so good. But it did raise a question for me. Why didn't Anakin's lightsaber turn red? You know what I mean? Like, yeah. I'm cool. Like, I'm not upset by it. Like, it doesn't bother me. But it's one of those things where it's like I'm connecting dots now, and I'm like, okay, well, if this means this, then this. But like, I was thinking, like, he murders a lot of people with that blue lightsaber. Is it because like the crystal was exposed, like the lightsaber was damaged? I don't know if that's a technical, because like I don't remember too much of the actual lore behind making a crystal bleed. Like I know it's a thing. I've seen like panels and stuff, but I like from some of the comics. But like, and you had mentioned that we saw it in Jedi Survivor, right?
Yeah.
Spoilers, sorry everybody. I don't remember any technicalities behind it, and I don't remember the actual logistics. Yeah. Like, what is it exactly? I was under the impression that it was something that you had to be focused on doing.
Intentional?
Yeah, exactly. It was like a deliberate thing that you were forcing the crystal to do that.
Yeah, we only have 3 official instances in canon of this happening. It is what we saw in the Acolyte, in the Rise of Kylo Ren comic, and in Jedi Survivor. All 3 instances are slightly different, which just means at the moment that bleeding a kyber crystal is not a specific process, but is just it's a term used for when a kyber crystal is corrupted by a dark side user, right? We also know that there's a process to purify a kyber crystal, and I don't know that we actually ever like get the details of it. We know that Ahsoka did it with Inquisitor lightsabers, and that's why she has the white lightsabers in Rebels and moving forward from that, right? Those are not her lightsabers. She loses hers at some point. We also know that at some point, while Anakin was in possession of Ahsoka's lightsabers and he was working on them, that the kyber crystals attuned to him and changed color, right? Like that's I think that was confirmed by Filoni or by somebody that's why when she ignites the lightsabers in Clone Wars, they're blue, right? At the end of Clone Wars, in the final season. So this isn't just a process of like it doesn't just apply to bleeding a kyber crystal to turn it red. This can also happen with a standard kyber crystal, and it can shift. The color of the crystal is important to the Jedi. If you actually also pay attention in the Gathering, in that arc, when the younglings get their kyber crystals, they're not necessarily colored when they find them, right? Like I believe that they're white, they're sort of like they're kind of gleaming white, and when they take them, they take on colors, right? um this is also supported by a non-canon story, which is my favorite Star Wars Vision story, The Ninth Jedi, right? Because we see that the lightsabers are constructed, and it's only when a Jedi is holding them that they change color and then activate, right? Like you have to have the Force in order to use those lightsabers in the Ninth Jedi, if I'm remembering it right. It's been a while since I watched it, but there was a component there, and it was in there for the storytelling because it revealed to us who the bad guy was, right? Because when they took the lightsabers, they all turned red. And then we discovered that like this guy that we thought was the bad guy was actually a good guy, and etc. etc. The rest of the Jedi were actually all Sith, or Dark Jedi, Fallen, whatever, however you want to read that. So all of this is sort of like supporting the idea that we know in canon, kyber crystals are alive, right? Like they respond to a Jedi, they attune to a Jedi, they are you can't just pick up somebody's lightsaber and use it. This is all supported by the dark saber, right? Din is not able to use the dark saber, not because he didn't win it in combat. He did win it in combat. That was sort of like the Mandalorian interpretation of it, I think. Was that like, oh, it must be won in combat because they're viewing it through a Mandalorian lens. But when we look at it through a Jedi lens, we can understand that like actually what's happening there is that Din is not attuned to the darksaber because the darksaber belongs to the leader of Mandalore, right? It through, was it Tar Vizsla?
I think so. Yeah,
I think it's Tar Vizsla
so.
who created it, right?
Right.
It was his kyber crystal. It was his lightsaber, because he was the first and possibly only Mandalorian Jedi until Grogu, right? But Bo-Katan is able to use it because she's attuned to it, because her goal is the unification and the the safety and like security of Mandalore, right? Which was Tar Vizsla's ideology as well. So like that's not what Din is after, right? Din just wants to live his life. He kind of just wants to be left alone, right? He doesn't want that. He doesn't want to be leader. And all of this is tying into Arthurian mythology, into Excalibur. Excalibur was similar, of like the sword in the stone. It could only be pulled by the person who was worthy, the person who would become the king of England, right? But I mean, like that, there's depends on which version of the myth you're talking about. Again, canon, nonsense, yada yada yada. Is there a true Arthurian legend? No, there's not, because sometimes he gets it from a lady in a lake, sometimes he pulls it from a stone, sometimes both happen in the story. It depends on which version of the story you're talking about. In any case, the Excalibur is the weapon chooses the wielder, right? There's a magic to it. This is in Lord of the Rings as well, right? So it, like, all of that is connected. It's all one. It's all part of the same thing. The one thing that is common when I look at the three stories of bleeding a kyber crystal that are in canon is that at some point in the process, the Dark Jedi is in direct contact, physical contact with the kyber crystal. Now, that might not be true, because what's his face? Oh man, it starts with a D. I can't remember his name from Jedi Survivor.
I never remember new characters.
Everything's like he's like floating crap around him all the time,
yeah.
But he's also like using his phantom arm to do things all the time, right, as well. So that, like, he's kind of not playing by the same rules. Telekinesis is a little bit overpowered with that character. He's also a video game character, so I kind of throw some of that stuff out the window. But in any case, like he removes his kyber crystal from his lightsaber and is like and he bleeds it, right? We see him do it. And then he puts it back in, and it's red. Ben Solo, when he's becoming Kylo Ren, he physically holds the kyber crystal in his hand. but there's also like there's like red force lightning and stuff, and you know, like it's a whole thing as well. Um, so like there's commonality there with both. I it's like on the tip of my tongue and it's driving me nuts. But that guy, the guy from Jedi Survivor and Kylo Ren, it's intentional, right? But it's also, it doesn't occur at the moment of their misdeeds, right? Like for Jedi Survivor, it's like hundreds of years after he does what he does. Um, that gets him, you know, cryogenically frozen, like thrown in the tube or whatever, right?
What was your guess on it? I looked it up. What was your guess on this guy's name?
I don't know. It starts with a D.
Uh,
There's an R in there somewhere.
Dagan Gera?
There you go. Yeah, yeah.
Dagan.
Dagan. I
Haagen-Dazs.
think it's Dagan. Yeah. I and Kylo Ren. This is after he has, you know, killed his friends, right? Although actually he only kills one of them. Kai, I think, is the one that he kills. So like the others are killed by Ren or by circumstance. Actually, how many of them? I think there's three of them. One I think falls off a cliff. One is killed by Ren, and then Ben Solo kills one of them intentionally, which I think is Kai, like his best friend. That happens, and then he bleeds the Kyber crystal after that, right? I'm pretty sure, if I'm remembering right. Maybe he does it right before, but I don't think he does, because I think it's in that fight that his lightsaber is damaged. And then when he ignites it, he. I'm trying to remember exactly. No, he makes the modification, and it's got the vents before. In any case, none of it happens in the moment. The thing with OSHA is that it's happening in the moment, right? And so she doesn't realize what's happening. She doesn't realize I think that this is just indicative of a fall to the dark side, right? She does not view her actions in that moment as wrong. She views her actions in that moment as justice, right? Which is a Jedi way of thinking of it. Now, we view it as murder. We view it as the dark side. But to Kymir's point, semantics, right? He doesn't look at himself as a villain. He looks at himself as a liberator, right? Like that's his ideology, and that's how he's justifying his acts. He murdered those Jedi. He didn't murder any Jedi. He defended himself. He defended his existence, because had he let them live, they never would have stopped hunting him until he was dead. So everything that he was doing was in self-defense. It was just maybe a little bit proactive self-defense, but it was, I mean, they were fighting, right? He appears, they ignite their lightsabers. That's the way that it goes, right? So, and a Jedi doesn't ignite their lightsaber unless they mean to kill. So his moral argument is actually quite sound. He would I think he has a very solid stand your ground case, to use American politics and legal definition, right? What OSHA does is a little bit different, but yeah, in that moment, she is falling to the dark side, and it's visually happening. We're seeing the bleeding of the Kyber crystal, and we're seeing the transformation, because it's visually communicating to us that OSHA has fallen. May never did. May never fell to the dark side. May was doing bad things, right? I mean, she murdered Indara. She told Torben to kill himself, but Torben technically is the one who killed himself. But she provided the poison. She provided the method, and you know, she had the intent. But May, I don't think fully embraced the dark side. That was kind of the point, because that's the lesson, right? How do you kill a Jedi without a weapon? there's a metaphorical component to it, but there was also a very literal component to it, which was to kill them with the force, right?
Mm.
Which is what Osha does, and is what Kymir like looks at and goes like, you passed the trial,
Mm.
right? The metaphorical component was kill the dream, right? Like you take away what makes them a Jedi. Soul was doomed before before Osha killed him, right? Before Osha did it, like he had already forsaken the Jedi path before she did that. As a matter of fact, like like, does she need to kill him? She needs to kill him for herself in order to self-actualize in a negative way, but it is self-actualization. That's the purpose of the story. The goal was accomplished before that moment, but it is also in that moment. Like they are one and the same, because Soul is confessing to, I mean, he's not really confessing to May. She already knows, but like they're talking about it and he's admitting to it, but he's also still defending his actions, right?
Mm.
But then Osha starts to choke him. She's killing him. He's dying. He's pleading with her, although not ever repenting for his actions. He's still trying to justify his actions. And then in the final justification, like he doesn't finish the thought, he doesn't finish the phrase, but he is in the process when she does it, when she kills him, of saying the thing a Jedi isn't supposed to say, right? He's saying, Osha, I love you, right? And it's in the middle of that he dies, so he never gets to finish it. But that's what Kymir was after. That's how you kill a Jedi. He's no longer a Jedi at that point. Soul has also fallen. He hasn't fallen to the dark side, but he has fallen to his own desire, his own self-interest, his own need, his own, like he's forsaken the path of the Jedi. Is that path correct? That's the question that we have to ask ourselves. And that attachment that the Jedi forbid isn't just about my own attachment leading me down the path to the dark side, but my attachment creating a scenario that is damaging to other people that could lead them to the dark side. Because I think one of the other things that we need to open our perspective to is the idea that the dark side is not just about Force users. I think that the dark side is, because we are all connected to the Force, we are all in tune with it, right? It's just the Jedi are communicating with it. That everyone is susceptible to the dark side. Everyone is susceptible to its influence, its machinations. This story is evidence of that. I think we talked about it last week. Leslie Headland talked about the idea. Actually, maybe this was something that came out after the episode, after the penultimate, after the 7th episode choice. The miners on Brendock uncovered the Vergence, and it drove them to destroy themselves. I read that as it made them insane. It's a dark side Vergence. It influenced them, and they eventually just all, like, they devoured themselves. The Vergence devoured them. It like the dark side came out, overwhelmed them, and they all killed each other, jumped into the hole, that pit, or whatever, right? Like something happened, they're all dead. And it's the Vergence. It was the dark side that did it, which is an indicator that like we are all susceptible to it. And when it's that concentrated, it can affect anybody. No one is immune to it. It also lends to, again, I don't remember if we talked about this on the episode or if I was just talking to Crystal about this, but to me, it's like that doesn't justify, it explains the actions of Soul, Torben, all of them, the tension and the way that they all kind of like they were not acting as Jedi. Like, they were not acting the way that Jedi should. They'd been on the planet for 7 weeks, and it was taking its toll for some reason, right? The same influence that it was exerting on the planet to regrow everything, it was exerting on them. But all of that is to like tie back into this idea that like that the Jedi are not virginses, right? But they are concentrations of the Force, and they exert the Force's will and influence on those around them. So for a Jedi to fall from the path and be swayed by the dark side, it affects everybody around them, right? Force users and non-Force users alike. Uh, and so Soul's decisions, although they don't lead to him falling to the dark side, his decisions, his attachment leads to Osha falling to the dark side, and that's represented. This is all tying back into the Kyber crystal. That and the reason why we see the way that we see it, it's his lightsaber, the same saber that he handed to her when he first met her in that same place, right? In the same location, in the fortress on Brendok, and he hands it to her in order to, convince her to join the Jedi. It's the same lightsaber that he did, like that act is taken with is the one that she bleeds and represents her fall to the dark side. It's his noble intentions are her path to the dark side. And it's symbolic and it's metaphorical, the bleeding of the Kyber crystal, which is why we see it on screen. It's why it happens in the way that it does. So to me, that's so much more important than any mechanical component of bleeding a Kyber crystal. I think the reality of it is that the reason why we don't see Anakin's lightsaber turn red is because it's blue in A New Hope, right?
Right, yeah.
Now, with all of the information that I've just given, it's entirely possible and logical that Obi-Wan possesses that lightsaber in the intervening years. If it had turned red with Anakin, it very well should have returned to its original state while in the possession of Obi-Wan for that long, especially with the intention of giving it to Luke. Even in the moment that Obi-Wan pulls it from the chest to hand it to Luke, that transformation could take place because Luke has no intention at that point in time other than pure intention, right? Like his entire life at that point is innocent and pure and heroic, right? He's the only potential he possesses in that moment is that potential for hope, right? That he represents that. So from a narrative perspective, that's the case. Obviously, everything I've said, everybody has the potential to fall to the dark side at any point in time, but Luke in that state is a very like pure representation of what it of potential in the Force, which is what Obi-Wan is seizing on. It's the moment. This is what he's been waiting for. It's what Yoda said in Revenge of the Sith novelization, in brackets, but he does say it of like nope, this is not for us to interfere with any longer. Like that's how we got into this position in the first place. We send them to their family. We let them mature. They will come to the Force. They will come to the Jedi when the time is right. This whole like that's Yoda reflecting on hundreds of years of doing the wrong thing, which is taking children and turning them into weapons, turning them into soldiers, right? And he reflects on it in that moment. And again, I'm adding new context with the Acolyte, with the Clone Wars. None of that was in Matthew Stover's head when he wrote those lines in the novelization, but it absolutely is corroborated by all of this other stuff. That's Yoda going like, we won't save the galaxy by repeating the mistakes of the past, right? He's actually saying the same thing that Kylo Ren is saying to Rey in The Last Jedi. Let the past die. But then he's got it wrong because he's like, kill it if you have to. Don't do that. No, Ben, you're so close. You took it too far. but he's on the right track, right? Of like the thinking that got us to this point is not the thinking that will save us from what has happened, right? So yeah. I think like I also think that up until the fight with Obi-Wan, up until what Obi-Wan does to Anakin in defeating him leaving him for dead, Anakin has definitely fallen to the dark side. Prior to that, he is Darth Vader. I don't think he's embraced it. I think that there's still a lot of conflict inside of him up until the moment that Obi-Wan turns his back on him and walks away. Right? I think that is the moment that Anakin's fate is sealed. And that's Obi-Wan's like sort of that's the point of the series, Obi-Wan Kenobi. Like that's Obi-Wan's failure. So Obi-Wan listened to Yoda. Yoda said you have to go and you have to destroy Vader. You have to end your student, right? To which Obi-Wan is resistant. He's like, I can't do it. I can't send me to face the Emperor. I can't kill Anakin, right? And he couldn't. He literally couldn't. He couldn't do it. He left it to fate, and fate had other plans, right? But had Obi-Wan gone in with different intention, had Yoda not, I think, colored that intent, and had Obi-Wan been true to his own emotions and to his feelings and been open to it, not closed off in the way that the Jedi are trained to, but and had listened to the living force and had listened to his promise to Qui-Gon, then, disaster would have been averted. In that moment, Anakin is defeated. Anakin's done, right? Like there is nothing that he can do. If Obi-Wan had saved him from the lava and taken him away and rehabilitated him, there's a chance. There's a possibility that Obi-Wan is able to deprogram, get into like go through it all, work through it, and help Anakin. And Anakin is no longer Darth Vader, right? But he doesn't. He walks away from him, and that's like that bond is like the final moment for me of like it's done. Like it's done. Anakin is now Darth Vader, and it's going to take something monumental to change this, and it's Luke, right? Like, and that's destiny, right? That's the predetermined fate of these characters. But if we're talking from hypotheticals, I look at it that way. And so after that point, Vader is then ready to bleed a kyber crystal and embrace the dark side. And I think the death of Padme is actually also one of those other pieces, right? And Palpatine telling him like, "Oh, you did it. You killed her." Which he does from a certain point of view, obviously. Mm. So yeah, I think you could put all of that together, right? And look at it that way. The bleeding of the kyber crystal is to me, it is symbolic of embracing the dark side, because Osha is doing it before she realizes that she's embraced the dark side, but she ignites the lightsaber. She's pointing it at Chimera, right? So she still thinks that she's a good guy at that point. She's still like, don't come near me. Like, I will end you. Which is foolish if she had seen any of the fighting. I don't think she's even remotely prepared to do that. But from a physical standpoint, I don't know. I mean, like if she's tapped into the Force, it's unlimited potential, obviously. But I who knows? I mean, that's not the way that the story goes, so we'll never know. But it's in that moment that she sees the lightsaber turn from blue to red. And the reason why that happens is because she is in her mind. In her mind, she's still a Jedi. She's still a Jedi. Chimera says, "Why do you keep calling yourself that? Like, why do you keep thinking of yourself as a Jedi? Like, they discarded you. You're not a Jedi." And what Yord says, he gets in your head and he stays there. She sees the lightsaber turning red, and that is her moment of true self-actualization, of her going like, it's done. Like, it's no, okay, I am I am the thing that I was trying to, you know, defend the galaxy against, right? Um, and she embraces it, and that's where, like, from that point forward, she is like, she's officially committed herself, devoted herself to the dark side. I like to go back to Anakin. I don't think that he has, even when he throws himself in front of Palpatine and you know, like, well, what have I done? All of that, like, I don't think, even when he's killing those younglings, he is not committed to it, right? He's still, there's anguish and pain in his eyes, and it's not like that anguish is he knows what he's doing is wrong. He hasn't justified it to himself yet, right? He's still, like, he's killing all of these people. He's fighting Obi-Wan. He's choking Padme. He's doing all of it, and he's like, he's still like, no, but I'm gonna fix everything. I'm gonna fix everything. I'm gonna fix everything, right? So he hasn't embraced the dark side. But it is in that moment that Osha consciously hasn't realized it before subconsciously she's already done it. She's already made the choice, which was to kill Soul, right? As he's confessing to his crimes and professing his love for her, she chooses to deny that and to kill him and embrace the dark side. And then we see the visual representation of it seconds after, right? And then she comes to the realization of, like, oh, okay, that's what I'm doing. And so that's where we can then get to everything else that happens the rest of the episode, and then the final moments of the episode with them, and with Khmer standing next to her and taking her hand, and the two of them being united at the end, right? That's what all of that communicates to me. Did I answer your question?
I don't know. Maybe. Kind of. I mean, really, the answer is that I'm landing on is, yeah, it was just like we're just establishing new stuff.
Yeah.
It's
I would
okay. I
even
wasn't bothered
yeah.
by it, you know? Like, it didn't really upset me or like annoy me or anything like that. It really literally was just like, huh, I wonder why Anakin's didn't. It was, you know.
I would even say that this is the only hard canon instance, right? The Rise of Kylo Ren is a comic book, and comic books are as flimsy as the paper they're printed on in terms of canon. They are one of the first things to be overwritten by other things, right? We've talked about this before. There's a hierarchy to this. I think, you know, like an article in Star Wars Insider, let's just go ahead and put that right there at the bottom. The data bank on starwars.com equally, right? Like, those things are the lowest level of canon possible. Sometimes they are attached to higher levels of canon because they're representing it, but if something is established in the data bank or in Star Wars Insider or something like that, an official Lucasfilm publication, lowest level of canon. Comic books are right above that. Video games are right above that. Cartoon shows are right above that. Live action TV shows, movies, right? Like that to me is like if it's in a movie, it's pretty indelible. I don't think that we're gonna get away from it. And if you're contradicting it, that's gonna be a hard row to hoe, because what makes it canon is to me the number of people that have engaged with that, right? Sure. And so, like, the canonicity is tied to the authority of the medium, I think, and the movies, I think, have the most authority because they're being viewed by the widest audience, and so that's being accepted by the largest number of people as the story. And so then TV shows after that, cartoon shows after that, you know, etc. But so, like, if it happens in a comic book, if it happens in a video game, it's not nearly as meaningful to me as it happening in Acolyte. so to me, I look at it and I go like, this is the first instance in live action. Nobody said that with the comic books, right? Nobody said that with the video game. Nobody added that qualifier onto it. They just went like, when it happened in Rise of Kylo Ren, it's like, oh, this is the first time that we've seen the bleeding of a kyber crystal. We know it as lore, like we've it's been implied in other things, in Star Wars Rebels, in this novel, in that comic, and whatever, right? With the Inquisitors, with Vader, whatever. But we're seeing this with Kylo Ren. Like, this is the first time that we're actually seeing it happen, right? Nobody was like, this is the first time we're seeing it, brackets, in comics, right? And then when we saw it in Survivor, it was like, oh, cool, this is the first time we're getting to see this outside of the comics. Right? Like, that's the qualifier there. It wasn't in video games, but when we see it on screen in live action, it's like, oh, this is the first time we've seen this in live action, because in live action means more than those other things,
right?
So to me, it's like, we establish now, from here, from this point moving forward, I think physical contact is part of it, right? It doesn't happen until she's physically in contact with the kyber crystal, not the lightsaber, the kyber crystal itself. Like, such a point is made that the lightsaber is damaged, the kyber crystal is slightly outside of its housing, the like chassis to the lightsaber is broken, it's exposed. She makes direct contact with the kyber crystal, and that's what, in the moment, that's what does it. So let's say Anakin, if he were in direct contact with his kyber crystal in the moment that he kills those younglings, yeah, it probably would have bled, right? But it does, it's sort of protected, right? But I also, like, I maintain everything that I said before. I maintain he is not committed to those actions. He doesn't want to do it. He hates himself for doing it. He yeah, like, I think he's in I think he's dissociated. I think that's a big part of it, is that just from like a mental health standpoint, that from the moment that he chops off Mace Windu's arm, sorry, Anakin's left the building, guys. Like, he's not here right now. Leave a message. And so Palpatine's able to just use him as a tool, as an instrument. But yeah, it's not until he wakes up in the suit that he's like back in control of himself, and it's in that, like, but yeah, cool.
Yeah, sure.
Bleeding a kyber crystal.
That makes sense.
What else we got from this episode that we need to talk about? I mean, we have made it to an hour, but this is the finale. I figure this one's going to be a bit of a longer
one. I don't know, man. Like, Vernestra, why why do you feel like Soul had to be the guy to get thrown under the bus? Why did everything fall onto him?
I mean, I think that Vernestra is she is a strategizer. It is still unclear what that means in the larger scheme of things. I think if she has not fallen to the dark side, she is absolutely listening to the dark side. She might not realize that that's what she's doing in these moments. Maybe she is also unaware of just how much influence the dark side has over her, but her actions absolutely are of the dark side. She just might be blind to it, and that might be what I was keying into, right? That's the suspicion that I have, that she's a Sith. But as we've been saying all season, right? Like, the more information we have, our perspectives are going to change. I look at everything that she does throughout this. She thinks that she is protecting the Jedi Order. Noble intentions, right? That's sort of one of the thesis of this entire series. Her noble intentions are a path to the dark side. She thinks this strategizing, that this scheming and plotting, because her ultimate end is to protect the Jedi Order, to protect the safety and security of the Jedi Order, that she is doing the right thing. Meanwhile, she absolutely knows that she's doing the wrong thing. Otherwise, why apologize to Soul? Right? But in that moment when she sees him there dead, she knows. I mean, I think she knows before that. I think this was the point in the sixth episode. What was the title? I can't remember the title of that one. It was one of the two titled episodes. But in any case, in that episode when her and Mog are when she's allowing him to hypothesize.
Six,
right?
You said number 6.
I think it's in 6, right? Yeah, because it's
teach corrupt.
There we go, teach corrupt. She leads him. She asks him leading questions, and then Mog goes, "Lightsaber. It's lightsaber." She said it's a leading question. She's like, that they were all killed by a lightsaber. What does that tell you? And then Mog goes, "Could Master Soul have done this?" And she, that's a pretty wild accusation to make. This is like, she didn't say it, but she planted the seed, right? And again, like, to me, like, that's dark side shit. That's not of the light side. That is not truth. That is not justice. That is not the Jedi path, right? That is very much deception, strategy, manipulation. That's control. That's the dark side. So whether she's aware that she's utilizing the dark side or not is I think still a question that needs to be answered, but it is absolutely what is happening there. So I think like the solution to the problem presents itself, and there's a resignation to that in that moment when she sees Soul's body, right? When she steps into that courtyard, there's a moment where she goes, I do have to do this. This is what I'm gonna, this is the path that I have to take. And so, like, she puts it even more into motion at that point, and then uses it to cover up the whole thing. What's interesting to me is that the story that she tells does not hold up to scrutiny, but only from the perspective of the Jedi, not from the perspective of the senators that she's talking to. So I think that in the next season, God willing, we get one. I think that will be her plot. I think that will be that story. Is that I think that there will I think that what is planted by the senator, oh man, his name's on the tip of my tongue, but David Harewood's character, right? The seed that's planted there is that there will need to be a review of the Jedi, right? That, and I'm guessing that what will end up happening is that there will be an internal review, because the allegory here for the Jedi is cops, right? Like, it needs to play out. And in our world, the whole problem with police corruption is that they are expected to police themselves, right? Like that's what we expect of them, and it doesn't work. It's obviously a broken system, because things happen and they get away with it, and they just move them to a different precinct, move them, they're suspended, right? So I think if that's the allegory that's being played out here, then next season, like, the plot line for Vernestra will be her trying to track down Chimere while managing this internal review that I don't know that she will be put in charge of it. I think she's positioned herself to be the one in charge of it, but I think that introducing Yoda in that final scene, which for my money, that should have been after the credits. It should have been an actual
Yeah,
post-credits scene.
I felt the same way. I was like, that really feels like something that
They
should
shot
have
it
been a
as
little.
such.
Yeah.
They absolutely shot it as such, and then we're told that Star Wars doesn't do post-credit scenes. But I think that's, I mean, like, Andor was allowed to do it as a post-credit scene, right? So I think that Acolyte should have been allowed to do it as well. But there might be a component there of like, they may have made the decision of like, no, we need people to know this. It may have been an 11th hour decision too. That might have been a post-credit scene up until this last week.
Do you think so?
Up until the decision was made of like, we're gonna move ahead with season 2. Yeah. Or at least like it's much more likely that we're moving ahead with season 2, and so the decision was made of like, well, then put the tease for season 2 before the credits. Let's make sure nobody misses it. Let's make them salivate, right? They've got Plagueis. Let's also give them Yoda. Let's give them both sides. And so like, hey, did you guys like that? You want to see where that's going? Ask for it. Scream about it, right? Put it up front. But yeah, like I think like that's a perfect opportunity. I mean, like if Leslie Headland is paying attention, the best thing that she can do is make it Ki-Adi-Mundi. that the internal review is conducted by Ki-Adi-Mundi, who very clearly is not objective. Who very like, if Vernestra was going to pick someone, if Yoda goes like, okay, yeah, we need to do this internal review, but your relationship with Senator What's His Face is contentious. It can't be you. You need to pick someone. Like, I know that this is your job. I know that this is your role within the Jedi, obviously, but like you need to step away from this. It'll be a show of good faith to Senator What's His Face that I should bring up his name. I'm sure he's in the data bank now, right? Yeah, here he is. Senator Raincourt. I like it, like as a show of good faith to Senator Raincourt, because he's pissed. He's pissed that he doesn't get to conduct this review. So show him, hey, this isn't me, you know, like I'm going to allow Master Ki-Adi-Mundi to do this. And it's like, because we all know that Ki-Adi-Mundi is going to be like, there are no problems here. The Jedi are awesome. The Sith, what are you talking about? The dark side, impossible. We would know, right? Like that's Ki-Adi-Mundi's whole thing. To me, like I look at that would be like the best thumbing your nose at that segment of the audience of like, yeah, not only is Ki-Adi-Mundi a big old dum-dum in all of these instances, like don't trust the things that he says. We don't trust the things that he says internally in the story. We don't try like he's being manipulated as a person who will not give an objective viewpoint, and that like his viewpoint is flawed. So he's even more responsible for the downfall of the Jedi. I think that would be perfect. That would be such a perfect way to just be like, there we go. Like, you know, like just like insult to injury sort of thing. Of like, the canon from Star Wars Insider number whatever is disregarded. Also, he is important to all of this. It's important that he was included in the first season, which would be, I think, a retcon, but I don't think that was the intention. But it would be such a delicious way of just sticking it to those fans of like, it's not important until it's important, guys. Settle down. Yeah. So I think that like everything with Vernestra is sort of pointing towards these things. It's sort of I don't know, like the dark side is obviously at play. We are meant to be suspicious of her actions. We are meant to question why she's doing the things that she does. And I don't think that they're meant to be fully logical or rational or bulletproof. Like, because I sort of had that thought in the moments of like, you can't pin this on Soul. It doesn't actually, like, if you actually play that out, it's like, wait, so then, because like Soul was in the temple when Indara was killed. So how do you explain that? Right. And it's like, well, he hired an assassin. Sure. Like, is okay. I mean, like, that's convenient though, isn't it? Isn't that a little convenient? And it's like, that's all you need in order to start like prying open the story and looking into it. And I think the interesting part is that May returns to Coruscant and is in front of Vernestra, and it's like, May, Osha, which one is this? Which one will we tell everyone this is? Right? Like, which we don't get an answer to. But I wouldn't be surprised if as part of it, because Vernestra, I think, is being honest with May, but I think, like, as part of that, of like you're gonna help me find my old Padawan, my pupil. I think like, as part of that deception, they'll play her off as being Osha in order, like, because they have to maintain the line, right? Yeah. It's important to maintain the lie. So it's like, you're Osha, which is interesting because they have switched places, right? So yeah, I think, like, yeah. I think that's where, I'll bet you anything that when that poster drops on Monday, and all of the characters are arranged in the poster, Vernestra and Osha will be on the same side of the center of that, because, like, I think it'll be, oh man, let's think about. I mean, like, yeah, I don't know, because they've already used the tree. I don't know what symbolism they'll use in it, but I bet you anything that May and Vernestra are on the same side of it, on the light side of it. But yeah. So listen, there's obviously some dark side shenanigans afoot with Vernestra, because that final scene with her and May, she comes in and Vernestra quotes, before she quotes Obi-Wan, because she does quote Obi-Wan, but before that she quotes Palpatine twice in a row, right? Like, the remove his restraints. Actually, well, no, Palpatine doesn't say remove his restraints. Palpatine just uses the Force and removes Luke's handcuffs, right?
He says you'll no longer need those.
That's right. Yeah. But so she says remove her restraints. But then she says to the they weren't Jedi, they were like guards, right? They were like some sort of other guards. She said, leave us, right? And that's like, that is a direct reference to Palpatine. And then when we turn back, it's like, the chair's not centered at the back of the room, because the Jedi would never do that. But if you look at it, the chair is absolutely reminiscent of Palpatine's throne. It's not a throne, it's just a chair, right? But it is that sort of like triangular obelisk sort of shape that Palpatine's throne is. It's on one side of the desk, and then the other side of the desk is a bunch of smaller chairs. So that chair is definitely a power chair. Also, we've been in a bunch of rooms in the temple at this point. We have not been in a room that is all black. This is very clearly like an interrogation room of sorts. Like this is somewhere that somebody with authority questions people with less authority. That's the design of the room. It's meant to be intimidating. It is meant to evoke dark thoughts. It is meant to, for us, feel imperial, right? It's black with red light up switches and white switches all over the place. The visual language is imperial. The visual language is Palpatine, the dark side, the Empire. And then for her to say leave us in that way, it's like something is wrong. Something's rotten in the state of Denmark, right? Like, that's the quote from Hamlet. There is more going on there than what is on the surface. Why use symbolism otherwise, right? So, but at the same time, it's all, like, to me, it's textual, because those when we make direct references, it's subtext with text, right? Like, it points directly to another thing. It's mimetic culture, right? It's the way that we communicate as millennials, is that we go like, hey, look at this funny meme. So yeah, but then for her to to say afterwards. This is less about Vernestra equating her to Obi-Wan and more equating Chimere to Darth Vader, to Anakin. When she says, like, you're going to help me find a pupil of mine before he turned to evil, right? Like, she directly quotes Obi-Wan. And Obi-Wan is being deceitful in that moment. Obi-Wan is not telling the whole truth, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the moment that we're evoking. And Vernestra is holding back the truth from May. She's holding back the truth from everybody. Yeah, it's very interesting stuff. Man, it will be such an injustice if we don't get a season 2, because
I'm gonna be so mad.
there are so many things. There are so many things that are laid here. It's time for me to ask you a question, Joseph.
Oh God.
We've had conversations about shipping in the past. You don't read this stuff into the stories very often.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty explicit at the end of this episode, at the end of this season, that Chimere and Osha are more than master and apprentice. She is more than an acolyte to him.
Yes.
Like it is not subtext. It is not like it is even more explicit than Rey and Ben, and all of that. This is not necessarily the sort of stuff that you're coming to Star Wars for, but on the flip side of that, you've connected with Acolyte in a way that you were very surprised about. I'm really curious to hear what you think about the two of them being unified in that moment, taking that step. It is, to me, it's reminiscent of a couple of things, but most evocative, it's Anakin and Padme holding hands on Naboo at the end of Attack of the Clones. Like, how do you feel about that? What's your opinion on it? Is this part of what's made Acolyte resonate for you, this part of the story?
That part of the story, not so much. Really, one of the few, I don't want to say problems, because it's not like it got in the way of me enjoying it at all. One of the things that I felt was weakest in the show was I felt like May's and Osha's motivations kind of just went wherever the plot needed them to.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it never really felt like, oh, this makes sense, because like even Osha's turning, that moment, like, even though the scene was really well done, it didn't make a ton of sense for me that she wouldn't hear him out first. Like, there was a connection there between those two, and like, it just, I don't know, it's a lot of the motivations for them to switch sides and like to do the things that they did, like, a lot of them didn't make a ton of sense for me, or at least it didn't feel like enough but I mean, to be fair, I also feel that way about Anakin in the prequels. Like, I am one of the people who feels like his turn is like, I understand it. Like, I understand it's he kind of reacted just the same way Soul did, right, when he killed Mother Anisea. Same kind of thing, knee-jerk reaction. I have to do this because of these other things. And he even says, "What have I done?" Immediately expressing regret, but then is like, "Well, I'm gonna fully lean into this, and I'm a bad guy now. I'm gonna murder children." So I always have a hard time with these things. Like, I'm never totally sold on an immediate flip. And funny enough, I'm rewatching Game of Thrones right now, and I have the same problem with Daenerys at the end, where all of a sudden she's just a villain because her friend dies. So it's just, I don't know if I just have a hard time in general with the story of someone choosing to go bad, because, you know, you have shows like Breaking Bad where for me, it's a lot more, you see it a lot more clearly. It makes a lot more sense. It's a lot easier to empathize with those. But then a lot of these like stories where you only have like a very small amount of time and you have to show them kind of switching motivations. It's a little knee jerky for me. It's a little too abrupt for me. So I had a problem with her in general throughout the series. Well, the two of them, but I do like where it went. Like, I like the story. I like the fact that she flipped sides. I like the fact that um,
Yeah.
it is this thing now where Chimere is like clearly a love interest. Like, and I know you and I don't usually, not usually, but like a lot of times we don't agree. But like, yeah, it's pretty spelled out. They're literally holding hands. It is very like end of Attack of the Clones. Like, they're looking off into the distance together, and
Yeah.
um, you know, I'm still in the. I don't think this is as bad as Raylo because Chimere has been. While I do think because he's a Sith, he's manipulative. I don't think he's as crappy to her as Kylo Ren has been to
Yeah. Yeah.
Rey.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely like, well, it's still a toxic relationship, but I at least understand why this is a thing. Like, I don't lose respect for Osha by choosing this relationship where I lost a lot of respect for Rey.
Mhm.
But yeah, like I'm super into this. I want to see them cause trouble together, and I think it's kind of like I'm excited what it sets up because clearly Plagueis is in the equation. Uh, the rule of two is a thing. They're not around later. Plagueis is Palpatine's master. What's going to happen to these two? Is it going to be them splitting off to Knights of Ren? Is there going to be conflict? Is Plagueis going to pit
Yeah.
the two of them against each other? You know, what's all of this going to look like from here? I I want so much more of the show, man.
Yeah.
Like, I
Yeah.
really, really, really want more of the show. So,
Yeah.
but
I
yeah,
think
that. Go ahead. Go ahead.
no. Yeah. I think one of the key components here for me is that I look at it and the way that I read it is that Chimere is fully in. Like, he has fallen in love
Right.
with this woman. I wouldn't say that Osha is there yet. Like, I think that there will be a little bit more push and pull, and I think that's more interesting anyways. If we return for season 2, for it to not be just like a foregone conclusion that now they are together. She allows him in that moment to have that, but he does it. He takes the action, right? She doesn't do anything. She just doesn't stop him.
Mm.
So to me, like, the communication there is she's open to it. She's okay with it.
Mm.
She went with him. She's like, yeah, like I accept your deal, right? So she's
Well,
accepted
she's
the deal with the devil.
clearly into him, at least physically, right? Because they had that weird sexual
Absolutely,
tension
absolutely,
in
yeah,
the
yeah,
previous episodes, which obviously was there on purpose to make this a little bit, you know, not a little bit more believable, but like make more
totally,
sense.
totally. Um, I mean, like, I think from an objective standpoint, if you're attracted to men at all, like, Chimere is just, he is seductive in that way. He is
He is
just
a
designed
specimen.
to be that. Yeah, exactly. So it's almost, that's almost like a non-factor. Like, absolutely does play into it, but it's like it's almost, it goes without saying more so. It's like, well, yeah, of course she's physically attracted to him. Who wouldn't
Mm.
be, right? But yeah, like to me, it's like, it's very much like he is she has made the deal, so she has committed to him. Now, not coerced, right? Of her own free will, but as part of like a spare May, and I'll do what you want, right? So she's made the choice
Mm.
of like, I'm going to do this. I'm willing to sacrifice myself and give myself to you as your acolyte if you don't kill May because you still want to for the betrayal, and also help me, right? Like, help me in this moment, erase her memory. That's her commitment. His commitment is um I think exactly what she needs in that moment, right? Because she's been abandoned by everybody, right? Like, that's it, the unspoken words in that moment are, I'm here and I'm not going anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
right? As opposed to the Jedi and to Soul specifically, who lied to you this entire time, and like they expelled you from the order. Yeah, you left of your own, but like they had that whole conversation, right? It's like, did you though? Like they asked you to quit so that they didn't have to fire you, basically, right? Like, and I don't know if anybody else has ever been in that position, but I have, and it's like, listen, if you don't quit, we're going to fire you. That was the conversation that was had, and so she left the Jedi Order so that it was her choice, and so that the Jedi looked better, right? And Soul allowed it to happen and didn't go with her. I think so. It's like she was abandoned. She was abandoned by her own family, by May. Everybody turns her back on. They either die or betray her, right? And so that's Chimera saying to her, like, not me though, right? Like I won't. I and her allowing him to do that is her leaving the door open for the possibility of it, right? So and I think that's the best way to interpret it, because it is not an absolute. Like I make the allusion to the marriage on Naboo as a thing. It's like I'm just like these two are tied together. These two are tied together in the same way that Anakin and Padme are, in the same way that Han and Leia are, Luke and Leia, right? Like these characters, it's not always a romantic thing, but it's often represented as a romantic thing. But characters are just tied together with those threads, right? With the Force, whatever. So that's my reading of it, and I think it's the best way to read it, because it leaves it so wide open for another season to explore that story, and to explore Chimera, and to explore the relationship to Plagueis. Now, here's the thing: I don't think that Chimera is aware that Plagueis is there.
Really?
I don't think that Chimera is Plagueis' apprentice.
Oh man, I do. I'm in the apprentice camp.
Do you?
Yeah.
I think that Chimera is Plagueis' tool, and I think that Plagueis is in his ear in the way that Snoke and Palpatine were in Ben Solo's. I think that every dark thought that Chimera has been an influence coming from Plagueis. And I think that analogy will be drawn. I think that will be strengthened even more in as the story progresses. That like the similarity between Chimera and Kylo Ren will become so solid. I think that we're not there now. I don't think that he is the first Knight of Ren now, but I think that he will become a Knight of Ren by the end of his story. Not by the end of his story, because I think that he'll continue on as a Knight of Ren. But I think that as this story continues, he will become a Knight of Ren. I think when he becomes aware of Plagueis, I think what will happen is that Plagueis will become aware of Osha, and when Plagueis becomes aware of Osha, he will discard Chimera, right?
Yeah, that's pretty much what I'm assuming is going to happen.
And I think that works either way, whether he is directly Plagueis's pupil or not. But the reason why I lean to him not being aware of Plagueis is because I think he would be much more careful about his desire for an acolyte, for a pupil. He'd be hiding that much more if he were directly under Plagueis, because it's in defiance of the rule of two, right? So
is it though? I'd like to introduce you to Asajj Ventress.
Yeah, of course, and Dooku and all of it, right? Like, no, I mean, obviously that's part of it, but what I'm saying is that like Palpatine goes to great lengths to hide Dooku from Darth Maul, and like it's all like because Palpatine is manipulating Dooku before Darth Maul's death, right? Like that he's working behind the scenes to manipulate Dooku before that. I think some of that is in the Plagueis novel, and some of that is in some of the Dooku stories as well, right? Like that stuff is going on. That plan is already well in place.
Yeah, because what Tales of the Jedi, the episode where Dooku turns, it's literally at the same time. It's going on at the same time as Qui-Gon's funeral.
Yeah, yeah.
When,
So
when
it
Dooku kills Yaddle. So like clearly, he's been messing with Dooku for a while.
yeah, he laid the groundwork a long time ago. So yeah, like I agree with you. Like the Sith are always, they always have contingencies. But also it's kind of the point of the rule of two that they're constantly breaking the rule of two, right? Like the rule exists in order to reinforce that the Sith are this, like they are like this the snake eating its own tail is not a very good metaphor in this, because that the Ouroboros has different meanings as well. But they're sort of like, it's a monster that it's always kind of devouring itself, right? Like it's the Sisyphus thing of like, the dark side is you get trapped in these cycles of constantly rolling the boulder up the hill. But I think that also that like the deceit isn't there now. Like they could reinforce that in another season, right? And they could come back and address that part of it, that like Plagueis wasn't supposed to know about Baldemnik, right? He wasn't supposed to know that that's where Chimere was. Chimere's supposed to be doing something else. But I think it would be much more interesting, and support my theories better. But so like I'm on my own agenda here, just like Vernestra. But I think it would be much more interesting if we discovered that Plagueis has been manipulating Chimere and was doing it initially through Vernestra, but that like when Vernestra, maybe this is even how Vernestra got on his radar, was in the moment when whatever she does, lightsaber whip, the scar on his back, all of that he was like, ooh, I can get in here and I can actually play both of them. Like, because that's a very Sith thing to do, right? That would be very, very dark side of Plagueis, to be like, I'm actually going to resurrect this dead kid using dark side sorcery, and prolong his life. And I am also going to start manipulating Vernestra and make her my apprentice. So Vernestra is the official apprentice, but Chimere is the secret apprentice that Vernestra doesn't know about, right? And so like that's where it's like, this is very interesting. But like, let's let Chimere think that he's doing his own thing. He's much more dangerous if he thinks he's on his own, because that's his whole thing, is this freedom thing, right? Now, it might also be a freedom from Plagueis, because Plagueis is giving him orders. And I'll also put out there that, like, introduce Tenebris, or introduce one of these other ones, right? Like, I don't remember, is Venomous Plagueis's master, or was Venomous,
dude,
like,
I don't
remember. Like, there's so many of them, right? And it's like, I don't remember what the hierarchy and the tree of these dark side users is, but like there are all of these other characters, and so it's like introduce one of them, like show like bring that in, that that Plagueis is or even that like somebody else was inching Chimere along this path, somebody else did this, like Tenebris or somebody, and that Plagueis has just now discovered that Chimere exists, right? But it's like, oh, it's very interesting because Osha is now here, right? And it's like, ooh, so what, like, who's going to be his apprentice? I mean, like, I think that will play out no matter what the situation. I think the implication there is like, he's coming out of the shadows because he's like, this Osha is very interesting. She could be the key to things, but the other part of it is like, is she just an experiment, right? What's Plagueis's involvement? Did Plagueis give Anastasia the idea to use the Force and the Virgins to create the twins, or did Plagueis get the idea to create life with the midichlorians from what Anastasia did, right? That's, to me, the biggest question that's going to need to be answered in regards to Plagueis, because I hear a lot of people. It's funny, the people that are like, and I'm just gonna generalize right now. This is mostly male Star Wars fans. They need Plagueis to be the one who planted the idea with Anastasia. They need him, HIM. Pronoun is important in this instance. They need him to be the one that is coming from, because this doesn't break the canon. This doesn't break it. This doesn't ruin Plagueis' story, right? So like, and like the people who are saying this, like I think they're all coming from, like, they're well intentioned. I don't think that they're being intentionally misogynistic. I think it's institutionalized misogyny. It's under the surface. It's systemic, and systemic, like, it's the worst. Straight up racism and misogyny is worse, but it's the most difficult. Is the most difficult one to deal with. Is systemic misogyny and systemic racism and that sort of thing, because it's like these are in our institutions and they're in the way that we're raised. But I see a lot of like sort of not clutching of pearls necessarily, but just like, oh well, there's still room for this to have been Plagueis all along, right? That like, it was just his first experiment with it. We know that he did multiple experiments. I personally think it's more interesting for Plagueis to have been inspired by this story, to have been inspired by May and Osha, and for him to then start to manipulate things and to go like, Ma, come here, let me learn more about you. And for us too, because this is the reason why it gives us the opportunity to see Plagueis explore that, right? It gives us the opportunity to see him hatch the plan. I don't want to come into the story with him already having come up with the plan to create life with the Force. I want to see him, discover this power and then go like, could we use this to our advantage? These witches were using it to prolong their lives, to continue their way. But like, could we use this as part of our plan, and then to see how that might link up with Anakin, right? Whatever that ends up meaning. So I like, that's, to me, that's how I see it playing out, and that's how I would like to see it play out. But I find it very interesting that the people that I'm seeing go like, no, definitely, like, Plagueis is the one who taught Anastasia how to do it. They've all been guys. Like, that's just a fact of, it's anecdotal evidence for me. I'm sure that you could go online and you could find female Star Wars fans that are also saying the same thing. But I think it, like, hey, women can be misogynist as well. I don't know if you guys knew that. I think it's very much coming from a place of like, no. This male character cannot be usurped by a female character, right? But so far, this will be a controversial opinion with a lot of people. So far, Anastasia is a much more interesting character than Darth Plagueis. I don't care about his novel. The novel was fun. But it's also very forgettable, and it's also like not really important. Nothing discovered in the Plagueis novel actually affects the story of the prequels or the original trilogy or the sequels. All it does is give backstory to an element that exists whether he exists or not. Right? Like, I would never say to somebody like I would say to somebody like, oh, you like Revenge of the Sith? You have to read the Revenge of the Sith novelization. Also, like read Labyrinth of Evil and read is it Lords of the Sith? Yeah, that's the one after, right? Yes, like you'll get so much more out of Revenge of the Sith. It'll fix your problems of Anakin falling to the dark side. Also watch the Clone Wars, right? I would give those recommendations to people. I would never be like, unless you're a hardcore Star Wars fan that has exhausted all other avenues, I would never be like, you gotta read the Plagueis novel. You gotta read this thing. No, you don't gotta read it. It's there if you're interested. So if it's something that you're already like you already want to go down that path, then especially now that it's not canon, like especially now that it's Legends, it's like you can read the wiki, like that's fine. Go watch a Star Wars explained video on it. I'm sure that if they haven't already published it, it'll be out in the next week or so. Like they will give you every piece of information you need to know from that novel about that character. You don't need to spend the 13 hours to go through the audiobook or the however long it takes you to read. If you're somebody that reads really fast, go for it. Right? If you can devour a book like that, go for it. But yeah, like Anasea in the 2 episodes that we get to see her in the Acolyte is an infinitely more interesting character that I would love to know more about. And it's like, please give us a comic book or a novel or whatever. That's actually funny. On Twitter, I had posted a thing of like, let me read my tweet. I'll read my tweet. Conversations about destiny versus choice in Star Wars stories, particularly in prequel stories, are so interesting because the characters have agency and free will within their own stories, but from a meta-narrative perspective, they are absolutely predestined, right? And this is all sort of around the Acolyte. It's like, and this came from the idea of like Soul having to die by the end of this story. And like, is it justified? Did he need to die from a storytelling standpoint, from a moral standpoint? It's like, well, it's regardless, he's destined to die because really all of these characters are destined to die except for at this point Yoda. Right? Like everybody else is gone by the time that we get to the prequels. Yoda and Ki-Adi-Mundi. Yeah. And we know that Yariel Poof is around and Opal Rancisis is alive, but and who else? What other characters are that?
Yaddle, right?
Yaddle,
around,
right?
Pretty sure.
In the High Republic era, right? But I like, regardless of all that, whatever. Like it's like this idea that these characters are predestined, and then another Twitter user. Oh man, shoot! I just hit the wrong thing. Retweeted it with this quote from the Revenge of the Sith novelization. One of my favorite bits from the Revenge of the Sith novel, from the prologue. This story happened a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. It is already over. Nothing can be done to change it. Like, and that's Matthew Stover, right? Mm. And I replied, yes, exactly. And then 2 seconds later, I was like, God, Matthew Stover really just gets Star Wars. Imagine an Acolyte tie-in novel written by him. And that's a thing that I'm gonna shout from the rooftops. I think it needs to happen. Like, let Matthew Stover write some Chimere backstory, some like the Coven's backstory, something. Like, let Matthew Stover come in and add to this tapestry, because I think that he would kill it. He would just absolutely obliterate. You give him this source material to work with, man. Let him tell some of this story. I think it would be really, really good. If I could see anybody come in and play in the Acolyte sandbox alongside Leslie Headland, I think that and like, let Ryan Johnson come in and do a short film or something. Like, let him come in and tell some of the story too, because he would sync up with Leslie Headland perfectly. They're telling the same types of Star Wars. Yeah, cool. I think we did it. I think we actually covered everything that I wanted to cover in this episode.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I can't think of anything that was.
I mean, we're over 2 hours, so.
Oh my God! Okay.
I think we did.
We got there. We did enough. What are we going to talk about next week? Well, not next week, but
yeah.
What do we do?
We're gonna be on the live stream on Saturday, so come hang out with us on Saturday, on July 20th. If you missed it, then go check out the Geeky Waffle YouTube page. I'm sure the live stream is sitting there for you to peruse through. We'll be on from 6:30 to 7 Eastern time. Head to our social media, and I'll be posting about it when we're about to go live and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, come hang out with us and talk about I think how well I'll describe it as the visual language of the Acolyte, sort of a precursor. We're going to do our podcast version, half an hour podcast version of the art book, because the art book doesn't exist yet, and the visual dictionary, because those are my favorite things when we get something new that's Star Wars. I'm like, but and when do I get the art book? Where is it?
I hope they do an art book for this show. This show is awesome.
Yeah, it needs it. It needs it. I need to see everything. So yeah, so come hang out with us then. We are going to take at least the next week off. We might take 2 weeks off. I'll see how it goes. Like I said, I think last time we talked about this, like I want to get Perfect 10 all sorted in advance of it coming back in September, and so I think I might take that time to do that. But stay tuned. We'll be back, and I don't know. I have some ideas. About things that we're going to talk about when we do come back. But stay tuned. And if you've shown up because of the Acolyte, there are plenty of great episodes of Force Perspectives to go back and listen to. We've got, Book of Boba Fett recaps. We've got Mando season 3. We've got Obi-Wan. But then we also just have like our topic episodes that have been really fun. So go and enjoy those. Thank you for hanging out with us. You can support us on Patreon, patreon.com/ThunderQuack, if you like everything, and come hang out with us on Discord at thunderquack.com/Discord. To get the invite to the server for that. Come hang out and talk about Star Wars. But until then, yeah, we'll be back in a couple of weeks to talk about more Star Wars with you guys. See you then. Follow Force Perspectives on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at ForcePOV. And join us on Discord at thunderquack.com/Discord. Support the show by visiting us at patreon.com/ThunderQuack to get early access to episodes, leave a rating and review on your favorite podcast service, or buy merch at store.thunderquack.com. Force Perspectives is a part of the ThunderQuack Podcast Network.